Hello, Hosanna Community Group. My name is Jen Alexander, and I'm really grateful that I get to spend just the next few moments with you as you're gathered together as a group. If you don't know me, I'm one of the pastors at Hosanna, and I just love the journey that we're all on together of figuring out what it means to live the blessed life. Really, we're just asking the question, how can we get better? How can we get better at loving people well so that eventually maybe we get to have a conversation together about Jesus? So far in the blessed journey, we've talked about the B is begin with prayer. So to pray, and ask God, who do you want me to be engaging with? And then once maybe we have a sense of that, to really begin praying for that person. And then the L we've talked about is just to listen. As Christians, we've gained a bad rap of not being great listeners. And really, we have to hear somebody's story before we ever gain a right to talk beyond that. So we listen. And then today we get to talk about the E, which goes really well with listening because one of the best places to listen is when you eat together with someone. So the E of the blessed life is eating with other people, being more intentional about who we eat with. I love to eat. My favorite food is Thai food. I bet you could share in your group what your favorite food to eat is, or maybe you're a coffee person and you'd rather go to coffee with somebody. Whatever it is, just spending time at the table with somebody. We all eat, most of us 3 times a day, and Jesus ate with people all the time. When you start looking for it, really, it's a fun thing to do to take any theme and then look for it all the way through when you read one of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And one of the themes that you can look for as you read one of the Gospels is the theme of how often Jesus is eating. Just in the book of Luke, there are 10 stories wherein Jesus is eating with someone or is present at a meal. 3 of the biggest stories that we can think of that revolve around a meal would be Jesus' first miracle in the book of John, was when he turned water into wine at a wedding feast. Right there in the middle of the party, Jesus was there eating and drinking with everybody else. The second story that comes to my mind is Jesus' biggest miracle, his most extraordinary miracle, was multiplying the loaves and the fishes, feeding 5,000 people. Again, we're revolving around food. And then his very last night that he spent with his best friends, he spent having dinner with them in the upper room, the Last Supper. The greatest accusation that was leveled against him by the religious leaders, the Pharisees, is that he ate with the wrong kind of people. That comes up a lot. You'll see that theme a lot. Jesus, how could you? How could you eat with those people? There were a lot of rules in the Jewish faith about what food should be eaten and who you would share a meal with, and Jesus just blew the lid off of all of those rules. We see him eating with tax collectors and sinners. In Matthew chapter 9, there's this beautiful story where Jesus calls Matthew, the tax collector, to follow him. And it says that Matthew immediately stands up and follows Jesus. And right after that, it says the first thing that they did together was went and had a meal at Matthew's house. So Jesus was eating all the time. And he used that time to have important conversations with people and to listen to their stories and to speak into their lives. I was thinking as I was just preparing this short little message about what have been impactful meals in my life. And the first one that came to my mind was when I was about 18 or 19. I actually didn't go to church a whole lot when I was growing up. We were sort of in and out, and my faith came alive to me when I was 17, 18. And I actually got invited to lead worship, to sing at this camp over a summer, but I knew very little about the Christian faith. I didn't know how to walk it out yet. And my boss, her name was Kathleen, I think that she just saw in me someone that needed to be discipled, needed to be brought along on the journey of what it looks like to actually follow Jesus. And so the first thing she did was invited me over to her house. She said, Jen, I would love to have you over for lunch. So I went over to Kathleen's house and she put before me a plate of crab cakes. And I'd never had crab cakes before. It just wasn't something that I'd had. And I remember it to this day when they were in front of me, like, gosh, what are those? And she explained, I love crab cakes. I'm on the East Coast and I mix them with butter. And anyway, they're really good. And so we shared these crab cakes and she just asked me about my life. And I don't remember the conversation we had, but I do remember the feeling that I had, that she had taken the time to make this really special little meal that was important to her. She'd put the time in it. She'd served it in front of me, and we sat and ate it together. And I just had a sense like, this woman really cares about me. She really wants to know about my life, and she really wants to be wind in my sails as a Jesus follower. And that happened over a meal. And so I would just encourage you to think on your own and even together as you're gathered about where are the opportunities where you eat 3 times a day. How could you get even more intentional about who you share those meals with and why? And just intentionally put those on your calendar to build deeper relationships with people who are already walking with Christ, but also to sit down across from people who've maybe never talked about their relationship with God. And if you eat with them, what might God do?